boy, somebody really wanted to beat Super Mario number 2. Did they not realize that they don't need guides anymore? You can look up speedruns on YouTube. I got a Super Nintendo here with a free Bomberman game inside of it. If anyone wants to give me 6 figures for it, you know where to find me. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Swaggle. A lot of money being thrown around Heritage video games signature auction right now, most specifically for a Nintendo Power number 1 CGC 9.8. Absolutely banana. So in this video, we got to cover this. We got to talk about this recent sale. We got to talk about Nintendo Power magazine. And then we got to do kind of a market report. Is this going to be another thing that kind of plays into what I've been talking about here on the channel, this next video game boom, this next video game surge? But before I get into it, if you guys could drop me a like, comment, subscribe if you're enjoying the content, helps support the channel, doing those things, I'd appreciate it. But let's get into this video here today. Now, of course, what am I talking about here? What sale do you speak of, Swaggle? Well, of course, I'm talking about this one right here. Nintendo Power number 1 CGC 9.8 sells just the other day on Heritage Auctions for $108,000. This, of course, is the record high sale for this particular magazine. Now, if you guys don't remember Nintendo Power, I mean, it is that Member Berries magazine. Remember back in 1988, Nintendo would come out with their own magazine, and this would be the place where you could get all these kind of, secrets. That this is back in the day before, these kids, the kids don't realize how easy they have it on YouTube. They could just look up all these guides. If you wanted to beat Super Mario 2, I mean, unless you had a friend who knew how to do it, I mean, you were basically stuck until Nintendo Power came along. And then you'd have this magazine that had a bunch of tips and codes, and it had guides, and it had level maps, and then you could finally find all the secrets. And this was, definitely something that was really awesome to read as a kid. In fact, remind me after the video, I need to call my mom and get mad at her for throwing out all of my Nintendo Power, because we could have been rich. We all could have been rich, if we just didn't actually use these magazines from back in the day. But anyways, Nintendo Power number 1, this is the only CGC 9.8 on the census. Now, there have been a few kind of big sales, I would say, for this specific Nintendo Power before. There was I believe it was a 9.4 that went for the 5-figure range not too long ago. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong on that. And, there's definitely been a few kind of big sales here. We saw a 9.0 go for $8,500 last year. We've seen, an 8.0 go for $3,850. In fact, if you'll notice here on GPA, across basically all of the grades, you'll see a lot of 2022s and 2023s. There definitely seems to have been kind of a big push into a lot of, the video game collectibles and, even branching into these Nintendo Powers as well. Of course, the graded video game surge has been something, definitely popping off in the market. Although, like a lot of things, when things get out of control right away, there is a major pullback, there is a major correction. And especially being that graded video games are so new on this kind of collectible space and collectible market. I mean, we really don't know, how many potential books there are on the census or games there are on the census. Of course, the Mario Brothers, I think, went for, over $1 million or maybe even upwards of $3 million, the highest graded Super Mario. But then there were more Super Mario 3s that came onto market. So that had a massive pullback. But it does feel like, kind of where the graded video game market is now, since there's been so much awareness to it, it does feel like it's starting to sort of find a level. And we're also starting to kind of, figure out what the actual census is. Because obviously anyone who had, say, a Super Mario Brothers number 1 sealed was instantly motivated to send it in to whatever, Wata Games or VGA to get graded and then put it back out on the market. So I would say that, where the numbers are now is probably kind of in line to what we will be seeing, at least in the next, few years or so, and probably the floor prices that video games are selling at today, especially with the macroeconomic factors. Definitely feels like, if you're somebody who actually believes in this market, I mean, now might be one of the best times to actually enter it if you're somebody who thinks, graded video games are going to be a thing of the future. Similarly here, though, back to the topic at hand, this Nintendo Power. I mean, this is another situation where, we have to be a little bit careful with this. I mean, whenever you have headlines like this, where you have a massive sale for a book that, hits this $108,000 price point, I mean, you're going to see a surge. You're going to see a surge. All you have to do is to go to eBay, look at newly listed Nintendo Power Magazine's #1. And sure enough, now you see a bunch of them, hitting market right now, a bunch of new listings and, a bunch of Nintendo Power #1s. I mean, obviously not necessarily ones that can hit that 9.8 grade, but these are the types of PR things that can cause a lot of FOMO in the market and a lot of sales to be generated. Now, if I do look at the sales for Nintendo Power, I mean, we do see a few that have sold in the wake of this big auction right here. So there is some people starting to catch wind of this, wanting to jump onto this thing. But again, I would use caution with this, where it's, look, we don't really know what the demand for these types of books are going to be. And we don't actually know if there's actually going to be more 9.8s to come. I mean, I would actually say that it's likely pretty rare that there's going to be, too many more 9.8s come onto the market. I mean, I feel like it's certainly possible that they exist. Because, I mean, you got to assume that maybe somebody out there, held on to their Nintendo Power, but also at the same time, I mean, how many more could there actually be? This was definitely a magazine that was meant to be read. Nobody looked at these things as a collector sort of book. So, it's not like, when people were even buying comic books back in 1988, even at that time, people knew comic books were collectible. So people were putting them in bags and boards. Nintendo Power, you can't really say the same thing. Although, as I look at this right now, I mean, I feel like, isn't this a little bit of a color break right here? I mean, I'm kind of surprised that this actually got the 9.8. Do you guys think that CGC, speaking of the wake of, CGC raising prices and stuff, do you think they see the sale and they're like, hey, Heritage, you owe us $5,000 because we just raised our prices to, 4% fair market value here. And we graded this thing for, the $20 of plastic that we put it in. So you owe us some money. I can imagine the people in Florida right now are starting to send some goons over to Texas and be like, hey, we need to break some thumbs. We need to collect some of that money. But let's kind of take a little bit of a moment before we kind of wrap up. I just kind of want to show you guys some of the recent sales that I thought were pretty interesting. I mean, this was their signature video game auction, and basically every game that was in this auction, I mean, was hitting really high figures. I mean, the lowest type of number you would see is still over 4 figures, for a Final Fantasy #7 right here. But, some cool stuff like an old Diablo #1 from 1996, still sealed, which is pretty cool. You would think that a lot of these video games would not necessarily be sealed because, a lot of people obviously bought these things to play them, especially back in the day, before you could actually download the game. But here's like a World of Warcraft collector's edition, a near mint copy of it still sealed that went for $21,000. Pretty cool to see some of these numbers. I mean, a lot of these games right here, classics, Duck Hunt, Ghostbusters, you got Hogan's Alley, you got Zelda, of course, you got Mario Brothers. So a lot of really cool stuff to see and a lot of big numbers being hit. In fact, another Mario Brothers copy right here that was an 8.0 sealed by Wada, basically hit that kind of 6-figure range at the $96,000 price point, which is cool to see. And one last little thing to point out with this Nintendo Power, I thought this was pretty cool that, on the back, it has this advertisement, which, who cares really about the back of a, your comic or whatever. But it is cool to see that it actually does have, a lot of these catalog of games, which I thought was pretty cool. I do think that the cover art for Nintendo Power #1 is cool. And then you get this bonus factor, the member berries. You get to see like Excite Bike and Pinball and Tennis and Kung Fu. I love the old school style of the Nintendo video games. I liked how they all kind of had that similar kind of graphic design, similar layout, and were all very like simple in their names: pinball, tennis, pro wrestling, soccer, baseball, like whatever it was, that's what the game was actually called. But, pretty crazy to see that, pretty crazy to see the market conditions may be swinging towards this video game craze. Of course, you know, I'm over here on this YouTube kind of promoting, you know, this video game boom. You know, who knows? We just got Mario Brothers, the movie. It did exceed the $1 billion price point. Of course, we're going to be getting a sequel for that. Probably going to get a Nintendo Cinematic Universe at some point. I mean, if they can basically print money with this stuff, I mean, they're definitely going to do it. So, you know, we might see this whole surge of pop culture stuff. You got a lot of young money right now, like the Logan Pauls, all those Twitch streamers that are making, you know, millions of dollars a month. And, you know, they look at these graded video games, and even if they're still, you know, 21 years old and they didn't actually grow up playing Nintendo, they do still have a fondness for the character and the IP that exists within these video games. And I see a lot of these Twitch streamers that have, you know, the collectibles behind them. And I do see that they have a lot of graded video games. So I do really think that the graded video game market is very interesting. It'll be cool to see if, you know, we see a surge of Nintendo power kind of in the comic book collector market. I can imagine some of those books showing up on some hot lists soon. Anyways, that's all I got for this video. Let me know what you guys think. What do you guys think about the sale? What do you guys think about Nintendo power? Are you getting that itch to buy some of your old magazines? Let me know what you guys think. Drop me a like, comment, subscribe if you're enjoying the content. I'll see you in the next video.